Well, hey, how's everybody doing today? That was pathetic. Okay. Hey, how's everybody doing today? There we go. Hey, my name is Nick. If you're a guest, we are so glad you're here today. We want to welcome all those watching online with us through Facebook Live or through our app or website or whatever you're watching. We are so glad you're joining us today. We are starting a brand new series called Shift, and it's going to be heavily car focused, heavily gauge focused, that kind of stuff like that. And speaking of gauges, really quickly, how many of you have ever run out of gas? That's it? Okay, because the second service was a lot more like me. Okay, so anyway, so I've run out of gas before, and it's crazy because I went about 38 years of my life with never run out of gas. You would think that like when you're 16, you run out of gas, or when you're 20, or when you're being silly or whatever. I've pushed it to the edge and the ledge sometimes. I've had it maybe even sputter a little bit sometimes, but I've never run out of gas until a few months ago, and it was the oddest thing. Because when I think of run out of gas, I think of you're driving, and all of a sudden it starts sputtering, and you don't make it. That's not really my story. My story is I was driving completely unaware, not looking at my gauges, not checking them out, pulled into work just fine, turned my vehicle off, went in to work, worked all day. It's like 4:30, 5 o'clock. I come out, nothing. I'm like, that was weird. Nothing. It's kind of turned over a little bit, nothing. I'm like, what in the world's going on? Drove in just fine. It was great, no issues, no problems. And so me, just so you know about me, like I am one of the most mechanically uninclined people that you will ever meet, okay? If you want to talk about shoes, love shoes, okay? Got my blue suede shoes on today, love shoes. You want to talk about a car? It runs. That's about as, I know where the stick shift is. I can drive a stick. That's it. I don't know a lot, so what do? I call my wife, all right? That's not the most manly thing in the world, is it? But I'm secure in who I am. And so I called my wife, and I'm like, hey, sweetie, I think you're going to have to come pick me up. I don't know what's going on. It was running great, coming in here, whole deal. And she starts asking me questions because, again, she knows more than I do about cars and stuff like that. And so she goes, are you out of gas? And I'm like, you got to be an idiot to run out of gas. No. She's like, did you check the gauge? I'm like, no. No, I didn't. She's like, well, when you turn it over, the gauges normally come on. What's it read? And I'm like, I don't know. I'll tell you. Hey, honey, I think I figured this out. I think I'm out of gas, okay? I'll call you back later. And so I went and got some gas, put a few gallons in it, got back. It was just fine. And I can tell you right now, since then, I've only run out of gas like 4 times. So it's awesome, all right? No, I'm just kidding. It's only 2. So anyway, no, I ran out of gas primarily because I didn't check the gauge. See, every one of you drive a car, and the car has multiple gauges, doesn't it? It's got a gas gauge, so you know whether you're full or empty. It's got a temperature gauge, so you know whether you're running too hot. It's got an oil gauge. It's got a tachometer that tells you how hard the engine's working. It's got a speedometer that tells you how fast you're going. Every single car has gauges, and aren't you so glad? Could you imagine sitting in a car, you got a brand new car, and somebody's like, hey, yeah, you want to drive my car? And you're like, yeah, and you sit down, and it's just a dashboard of just wood. And you look at it and you go like, well, what am I supposed to do? Just drive it on how you feel. Just take it out and don't worry about the gauges. Don't worry about that. Just drive it and how you feel. How comfortable would you be? I tell you right now, I would feel very uncomfortable. I would feel so uncertain. Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Am I out of gas? Do I need to stop? I would fill it up more often. I would stop more often. I would check things more often. I would feel so insecure without the gauges around me. And yet gauges keep us in reality. How many of you have ever, just come on, be honest. How many of you were just driving maybe a nice, probably newer car, and maybe it was a rental car. I love doing this with rental cars. You were driving, and all of a sudden, your spouse just blurts out, you're doing 100, slow down. Anybody do that? Nope, just me? Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yes, awesome. We got some honest people in here. Yeah, and here's the deal. I didn't feel like I was doing 100. I did notice people were going slower than I thought they should have been, but that's a different conversation. But yes, because here's what we know. Our feelings will deceive us. Our feelings will mess us up. How we feel isn't always in reality. And here's where we're going to go for the next several weeks. I'm so pumped about this. That what we understand and what we appreciate in a car, the gauges, that make us go further and faster, that allow us to go longer without having to refuel because we know exactly how many miles. Don't you just love technology when it says you have 21.4 miles left to go? How many of you ever challenged that? Like, I think I can go 22. Yeah. How many of you didn't quite make it? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, cool, yeah. You're like, challenge accepted. Okay, cool. We love it there. Here's where we're going to go. I believe that many of us, myself included, for so long, we miss it in our personal lives. We miss it in our walks, in our relationships with significant others, whether it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, or marriages, or a best friend. We miss it in our walk with God. We miss it in the journey. Because here's what I know. Every single person in here, whether you're a Christian or not, whether you believe in God or not, you're on a journey. You're heading somewhere. You have a plan. You've got a destination. And we are all driving down the highway of life. But some of us are going faster than others. Some of us are going to get there quicker. Some of us are going to get to where we want to get. And all because we are looking at the gauges. All because if you don't have the right gauges on the trial of life, here's what happens. You're going to either go too fast and run it too hard and you're going to get pulled over. Some of you here today, you've been pulled over. You've been pulled over, not by the cops. I mean, many of us have been pulled over by the cops. But you've been pulled over by a relationship that went sour. And you had no clue anything was wrong. You had no clue that you were running way too fast in a relationship. And all of a sudden something happened. And there was an awkward conversation. Says, hey, we need to talk. Some of you were going too slow or you were running out of gas. And again, you had no clue. You knew you were pushing it. You knew you were tired. You knew you were stressed. You knew there was a lot going on. But all of a sudden, it just starts to sputter. It just starts to stutter. It just starts to stop a little bit. And you look down and you realize you're out of gas. Every single one of us were going somewhere. And I'm so excited to be talking about the gauges. I believe that there are some gauges that we need to be looking at to ensure that we end up where we're headed. Because as I said, every single person in here, you're on a journey, and we're on this journey together in so many ways. And I'm pumped to be talking about this. So if you've got a Bible, we're going to start off in Exodus chapter 18. If you don't, that's okay. We're going to put it on a screen here in a second. But let me catch you up. We're going to be talking over the next 4 weeks about a man named Moses. Now, if you grew up in church at all, or you probably heard of Moses. Moses did the 10 Commandments. He parted the Red Sea. He had all the plagues come down. I mean, Moses is just known for many, many different things. And over the next 4 weeks, we're actually going to look at Moses, but we're going to ignore the big stories. We're going to ignore the things that like everybody focuses on, And I actually want to look at 4 kind of obscure stories. 4 stories that you probably missed as you were reading and you probably read through and didn't think too much about that really, I think, speak to some stuff that we need to deal with. Because here's what I know. Moses is one of the best leaders in all of Scripture. Moses accomplished more than many of us can imagine in our lifetimes. Moses led millions and millions and millions of people. And he had a relationship with God that was so unique and so different. In fact, it says in Scripture that he talked with God face to face. And I believe there's some stuff that he can speak to us about our lives and about the gauges that we need to accept. So here's what it says. We're going to pick it up right here. Moses has accomplished what he's going to accomplish. He's part of the Red Sea. He's done the plagues. He's led Israel out. He just got done fighting the Amalekites in the previous chapter. He won that battle, and he is finally good. And we're going to pick it up, because here's what happens. Isn't it true that when everything's good, your in-laws come into town? Isn't that what happened? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, just don't raise your hand on that one. But, that's what happens. Like, everything's good, and the in-laws come into town, and it's like, oh, dang it. But his in-laws come into town. He's been there for 48 hours, and we're going to pick up the story. Here's what it says. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, now again, this is a snapshot. He's only been there for about 24 hours this time. He said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Now let me unpack that, because we skipped some verses, but what was happening was they're finally good. They're kind of settled a little bit. They've escaped the dangers. They fought the battles. They fought the things that they're dealing with, and they're somewhat in a good place. Moses has achieved his vision. He's accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. And now, daily, Moses goes out. He's got a seat, sits down. People surround him. People surround him, all around him. And they ask him, "Hey, so-and-so kicked my dog. Do something about it. Hey, so-and-so stole this. Hey, so-and-so, they said a bad word. We need safe spaces. We need, whatever. So-and-so did this. Just all these different things. I'm sure some of them very important. I'm sure some of them very, very odd and obscure. But it says that Moses would get up daily. And my assumption is it just says they're all around him, thousands of people potentially, because he's leading millions of people. Thousands of people are just waiting for their turn. They're all around him. And so he sits as judge and jury over the whole nation. And it says that it starts right when he sits down in the morning, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, whenever he gets up, has his breakfast and is there. And then by the end of the night, when it's evening, when the sun's setting, he's exhausted, the people are exhausted. He gets up and goes, listen, there's no more light. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Gets up, goes to his bed, gets up the next morning, does the same thing. And Jethro, his father-in-law, somebody I believe that he respects and values their opinion, looks at him and asks him an important question. An important question I'm going to ask you today. What is it you're doing? Because sometimes in life you can do the right thing the wrong way. Sometimes if you don't have the right gauges in your world, you can be accomplishing and you can be busy and you can be overworked but underproducing. And I believe that's where Moses was. That he was stressed out, he was overworked, and at the end of the day, he's looking around going, I still have more to do. How many of you feel like that? That literally, you go to work, and every single day, there's 45 emails waiting for you every single morning, and at the end of the day, you try to get to inbox zero. And how many people love inbox zero? I love that. That is like heaven for me. I get a little badge, and I love that badge. That badge makes me feel good inside, okay? It's just something inside of me, okay? I just love it. Inbox zero. Guess what happens every day? Like nobody leaves me alone. There's more people. There's more things, okay? Every single day. Some of you can relate. It's with your job. You got a promotion. You finally got the promotion you wanted, and all of a sudden, what happens is you're still doing what you're doing, but now you got to manage people, and it's more. And you feel like no matter what you do, no matter how much you work, no matter how hard you work, there's always more to do. There's always more people. There's always more stuff. Moms, dads, let me just ask you, how many of you feel like no matter how much you do laundry, or how often you do the dishes, or how often you clean the floors or whatever, how many of you feel like, you know what, it's never done. It's never enough. That like the moment that you're like, laundry is done, some insignificant and just little child goes, I'm done with this, and throws it in the laundry room, and you just want to stab them, okay? How many of you like okay, got a few honest people. Yeah, so that happens in my household. Lisa does the laundry in our household, and so I just, listen, we had that struggle, She's like, I'm done. I'm like, well, technically, and she's like, don't, and that's kind of what happens. Like, we have this argument, because it's never done. It's never enough. Like, we live lives where there's always more to do. I have 5 kids. That's right, 5 if you're a guest. We like each other. And so, we have 5 kids, and here's the deal. They always want to eat. I don't understand it every day. They're like, Dad, what's for lunch? And I'm like, I don't know. You're 5. Make a sandwich. Get a job. I don't know what you're going to eat, But every day they're like, feed me, the whole deal. And I don't know about you, but I know me. And there are parts of my life where, if I'm being really, really honest, it just feels like I can never get ahead. It just feels like no matter what I do, even if I work extra, even if I put in a couple extra hours, I'm like, oh, this will get me ahead. I'll work really hard today. I work really long today. That just tomorrow comes, and it just seems like there's more and more people wanting a piece of me. This is Moses' life. And for Moses, what's so important is this has become the new normal. This has become what his life is. And some of you sitting here today, you're stressed, you're overworked, you're constantly going, you got 100 things going on, and yet you feel somewhat trapped, and you just kind of tell yourself, you just kind of believe the myth that, you know what, this is just kind of the way it is, I just got to get through it, I just got to go through it, it'll be fine, I can get through it, I can deal with it, this is just normal life. And I'm here to tell you right now, it's not. That there is a way to make a shift in order for you to be more rested and more productive. Story goes on. Moses answered him, and here's his reason. Why are you doing this? Because the people come to me to seek God's will. In this verse, it sounds very spiritual, doesn't it? I mean, right? Like he's being spiritual, like because Jethro, maybe you don't know this, but I am the leader of millions and millions of people, and I talk to God face to face every single day. People come to me to seek God's will. It's very, very official and spiritual. And I'm so glad that Jethro saw through it and called him on it. Because it's so easy for us to go spiritual in our answer sometimes, isn't it? It's so easy. We're like, why do you do that? Well, because God told me to. Because that's really the right thing to do. We get this moral high ground because I got this whole thing. I'm supposed to do that. It's so easy to do that. But at the core, let me tell you what I really think Moses is saying. Because people want me. because somebody asked me. Because I have a hard time saying no. See, one of your biggest struggles, one of your biggest temptations, probably like my biggest temptation, is we don't like to let people down, do we? We don't like to say no. We love, again, I don't know you, but I know me. I love to feel needed. I love it. I just do. I love it. Like, man, we couldn't do it without you. And I'm like, darn right, you couldn't do it without me. I'm the man, you know. I love that. I'm just being really honest. I just love that feeling, you know. Because I'm also very aware of all the things that you could do without me, like fix a car. I mean, that's one of them. You could easily do that. But every single one of us, I think there's this need, there's this, how we're wired, that are made to be desired, that are made to be wanted, that are made to kind of allow ourselves to be puffed up by this need. And you and me, we have needs from people that outweigh and outpace our capacity. You have people calling on you that outpace your calling. We're going to unpack that here in a few minutes. But Moses gives us a peek into his ego, I think, a little bit and says, listen, what else am I supposed to do? They need me. You don't understand, Jethro. They need me. I'm the one that seeks God's will. I'm the one that talks to God. No one else can do that. If I don't do it, no one else will. You ever said that? If I don't, they won't. I got to. And again, I'm so glad that Jethro was able to filter through all the spiritual, filter through all the stuff, and answer him. And here's what he says. Moses' father-in-law replied, what you're doing is not good. Translation, that's wrong. Stop it. Stop it. That is not good. And here's the reason why. He unpacks it for him. You and these people who come to you will only wear, and here's the key word, yourselves out. It's so important. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Here's what he's saying, and I think he says something so insightful here that we miss, because your temptations, like my temptation, we think we can handle it. Matter of fact, I say that all the time. My wife hates it when I say that. I'll say, because I've got a little bit of an ego problem when it comes to this. I can handle it. I got broad shoulders. I can deal with it. I got it. I can fit you in. I can add that. I can do that. I can be on that board. I can say yes to that. I can help that person. We can financially help them. We can go there. I can handle it. Moses feels like he can handle it. And Jethro says something so just insightful. He says, Moses, let me tell you what's at stake here, though, buddy. See, you think it's just about you, and it's not. He says, you and these people, you're going to wear everyone out. And isn't that true? The more I thought about this, the more that hit me. That you know what? If I'm stressed out, if I'm working too much, if I'm going 100 miles an hour, and at work, in this area here, guess what happens? I'm worn out. But then I go home and I wear out my kids. And I wear out my spouse. Because I'm stressed. And I don't have the patience I need. And I don't have the grace I need. And I don't have the clarity that I need. And I don't have any more because I'm running on empty. And I'm worn out. And so what do? I wear out all the people around me. Jethro says, listen, it's more than just you you're going to wear out. When you wear out, guess what? You're going to wear out everybody else. And there's some people in here today right now. You're wearing your spouse out. You're wearing your kids out. You're wearing the people at work out. Why? Because you're so stressed and you're so going 100 miles an hour and you're so just kind of trying to fix it and do all these things, and you're going to practices and band rehearsals and you got all these activities. Then you got your hobbies and you got your job and you got your marriage. You got all these kind of different things going on, and you're stressed out, but you believe it's just about you and you believe the myth. I can handle it. Let me just ask the question. For all of you, sit back and go, no, I think I'm okay, Nick. I can handle it. How's your spouse feel about it? How's your boyfriend, girlfriend feel about it? How do your kids feel about your schedule? They think you can handle it? Because here's the beautiful thing about kids and spouses. They'll be honest with you. I mean, they'll tell you, nope, you're terrible at that. Nope, you work too much. Nope, you've been kind of cranky. I wasn't going to say anything, but now that you asked, floodgates open. Boom. So be careful with that question, all right? Jethro says, listen, Moses, I know you think you can handle it. I know you think you're special. I know you're responding off a part of you that says, oh, you need it, and they need you, and you need to do this, and you need to do this, and da-da-da-da-da-da. You're going to wear yourself out, but more importantly, when you get wore out, you're going to wear everybody else around you out. And I see it over and over and over and over again. It's one of the reasons marriages crumble. Two people fall in love, and they love each other, and one of them or both of them get worn out. And people say things like, oh, I fell out of love. No, you didn't fall out of love. You just wore each other out because you didn't have the right gauges. And the fuel tank was on empty. And you never stopped to refill it because you didn't have the right gauges to fill it back up. He goes on. Listen to me now, and I will give you some, and here's the key word, advice. We're going to come back to that. And may God be with you. You must be the people's representatives before God and bring their disputes to him. Jethro says, listen, here's your calling. Your job is to be the representative for God's people. That's clear. Your job is to teach people what they are to do, the right from wrong. That's your calling. Very clear. Right after this, he says, but. He says, yeah, here's your calling, but, and then he gives him some incredible advice. If we had time and we don't today, it's third service. You want to take some time to unpack it? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, don't answer that. But he says some incredible advice, and he starts to tell him, hey, you need to delegate more, and you need to do this, you need to find people of thousands, and people of hundreds, and people of 50s, and people of tens, and you need to kind of do that, and you need to let go of some stuff, and you need to step back, and you need to make sure that you find people with these kind of characteristics, and he kind of unpacks this. It's a great passage, very, very practical for our world when it talks about delegation. And he makes it very easy for Moses, and he gives him step by step what you need to do. And he says, here is your next steps, and it's advice. It's not from God. He didn't say, hey, God told me to tell you. No one loves that person, right? Okay? He just said, I got some advice. Here's what I think you should do. And when he gets done with that, here's what it says. Here's how passage ends. Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. And it's a little bit anticlimactic, isn't it? It's a little bit like, oh, okay, so what happened? Like it just, did Moses feel more peace? Did the people feel better? Like, was there less arguments? I mean, what happened? We don't get insight into what happened as a result directly of that delegation. Here's what does happen, though, and here's what we do get an insight into. The next few chapters unpack Moses' single greatest achievement. It's the achievement that every person in America knows and has heard about, whether you believe in God or not. That the next few chapters, I really believe, as I was studying this and reading this, that because Moses delegated and finally had some time, finally wasn't getting up in the morning, dragging his feet to the chair, staying there all day, and then dragging his feet from the chair to the bed, he finally had some time to spend with God, and he actually went on the mountain top, spent 40 days there, 40 nights, and he received the 10 Commandments. And it changed. It changed a whole nation. If you've never read that, it's a fascinating, incredible story about what God does through somebody when they finally make a shift and stop focusing on being so busy and focus on being productive. What I would say to you today and for the rest of our time is I want to unpack some shifts I think Moses had to make, some things that he had to separate and some gauges that we need to have in order to make that shift. Because here's what I know. I don't know the specifics. You don't know the specifics. But there is something in front of you that I believe God wants you to do, God wants you to accomplish, God wants you to see, God wants you to experience in a way that you can't fathom. And if he would tell you, you'd do it in a heartbeat, but you don't know. So it's so easy to sit back and just sit with the new normal, to be frustrated, to be overworked, to be stressed, and not change anything, to not do anything different, and just like, you know what, my life is fine, my life is okay. Let me stress to you, you were made for more than okay. I hate it when people tell me it'll be fine. You were made for great, not fine. And so for the rest of our time, I want to unpack 3 things. 3 shifts, 3 transitions, 3 things that Moses had to decipher through that allowed him to make the right decision and ultimately allowed him to receive the 10 Commandments from God. Number 1 is this: calling versus callers. His calling was clear, okay? Train people, lead people, make sure they know what God's will is. That was his calling. It was abundantly clear. But as we've talked about, and as I want to unpack this, the higher your calling, guess what's going to happen? The more callers that you're going to get. They go hand in hand, and your callers will always outpace your calling every single time. You will always be tempted to kind of spend all your time dealing with the callers, spend all your time messing with that. It happens all the time. See, if you're married, you have a clear calling. Love your spouse no matter what, through thick and thin. Period. That's your calling. Like we can unpack that a little bit more, and but your calling's really, really clear. And let me just pause and say this. thick part too, okay? Good and bad. A lot of people get the whole like, I love him when it's great, and it's like when it's bad, like, are you sure, Nick? Yes, clear calling. Love your spouse. That's your calling. How you do it, we're going to get to that in a minute, but it's clear. If you have kids, you have a clear calling, right? If you have kids, listen, I have 5 kids, and my calling for them is to raise well-adjusted, well-equipped kids who leave, okay? Like at 18, I'm like, hey, you're 18. Get out, okay? I love you, but I'd love to love you from a distance. That'd be great. Just go, And I love my kids, but you know what I know? I just don't want to have, a 42-year-old son or daughter in my basement. I just don't want that, That's my calling. But let me tell you right now, I got a lot of calls that can interfere with my calling. I got a lot of calls, both literal. My phone, you ever hang out with me? My phone can ring off the hook. Text messages and emails and hold it. I got a lot of callers. I got a lot of things vying for my time. And it's crazy. As our influence as a church has risen, as our influence as a pastor has risen, or whatever, guess what? More calls, more, hey, would you be on this board? And would you do this? And would you go there? And what about this? And could you come in and do this? And as I've just done some other things, hey, could you do some counseling? And what? I just call. And here's the kicker. They're not bad. It's not bad. That's the temptation. That's the struggle, is we say yes because they're good things. I'll tell you, if you've never read the book, Good to Great, buy it, read the very first line, and then you can shut it, and you'll still be a better person for it. The very first line is just unbelievable to me, and it says this: the enemy of great is good. There is nothing that is more true. There's nothing. You were made for greatness. Jesus consistently said no to good opportunities to achieve his greatest opportunity, which was to die for us and lead us to salvation and reconnection with his Father. That was what his calling was. And yet if you read the life and the stories of Jesus in the Gospels, he constantly had callers. He constantly had callers. Hey, would you do this? And hey, would you do this? And would you heal this? And would you go over there? And would you, there's this one insane story, and I don't understand it. I just know Jesus had a very clear calling, but there's a story, and it's so cool. Maybe you never read the Bible and you miss a story, but there's a story where there's a whole bunch of sick people, and Jesus literally is stepping over the sick people, and he's like, you're healed. And I have no clue why he didn't just sit there and heal. I have no clue. What I know is this: he had a calling. And I'm sure everybody in there wanted to be healed. He's call. He's like, no, I got a calling. I got to separate the two. You have a calling. You have something you're supposed to do with your kids, if you have kids, with your spouse, if you have a spouse, with your job, if you have a job, with your finances. You have a calling. But yet, what I know is these calls we get. Can I just say that this is maybe the single greatest invention in the last 100 years, in my opinion? I mean, I don't know about you, but this thing is incredible. If you'd show this to somebody 15 years ago even, and what it can do, they'd be blown away. This leads me. This leads you. Leads you everywhere. You know how I know? Because here's what I see all the time. Okay, that's cool. Excuse me, get out of my way. Thank you very much. It's just leading. It's just leading. It leads all of our lives. We take phone calls we don't want to take. It's the craziest thing. You ever think about that? Like, you bought a phone for you, right? You bought a phone for you, and people are calling you, and you're taking phone calls that you don't want to take. Why? I don't know. You just feel like if they call, there's a caller. I really got to take this. No, you don't. Can I free you up right now? You don't have to take every phone call you get. Matter of fact, let me just encourage you, you probably shouldn't take every phone call you get. You probably should have a ratio of how many no's you want to say to yeses. Let it go to voicemail. I promise you that most of them are not that important. How many of you have been in an important conversation? Sitting with a friend, maybe a spouse, maybe your child. Maybe you're sitting down playing games. I don't know what it is, but you're in something important. You're in something that you would say lines up with your calling, and yet you hear this. And all of a sudden, they're talking. It's like the most important part, and you're like, And yet in the back of your mouth, all of a sudden, that turns into the Charlie Brown, wah, 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 and you've got a voice in your head going, I wonder what they said. I wonder what that is. I wonder who it is. I wonder if this is, I bet somebody's house is burning down. I bet it's my house. I better answer this. If I don't answer this, my house is going to burn down. People are going to die. It's actually right for me to answer this phone call right now because, listen, people's lives are at stake. Okay, just give me 1 second, son. Give me 1 second. Oh, honey, it's a meme about a monkey sniffing something. Okay, no, that was not worth it at all. Okay, we do it all the time though, right? We can't say no to this thing. We have a hard time saying no to all the calls, on our life. And yet, if you want to be productive, if you want to see the life that God called you to do, if you want to really go where God wants you to go, you're going to have to be really, really good about looking at this thing and going, you know what? I'm going to turn it off. Some of the most productive, successful people I know have hours in the day where they just turn this thing off and go, you know what? If it's that important, I'll get to it later. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to spend some time with my family. I'm going to spend some time with my wife. I'm going to spend some time with my husband. I'm going to spend some time just studying. I'm going to spend some time with God. I'm going to spend some time doing the calling on my life. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it because I know it'll be destructive. You know, so let me just pause real quickly, ask you a question. How many texts have you gotten that were life and death? And yet every time it happens, we treat it that way. And it's a lie. It's a shift that we need to make in what we see. You will always, always, always have more callers that outpace your calling. And Moses was able to distinguish between the two, distinguish between what he was supposed to do and how he was doing it, which leads us to our second point, which is this: method versus motive. Method versus motive. They're two different things, right? And yet, here's what I see all the time. Somebody challenges your method, they are so closely tied that you feel like they're challenging your motive. Moms, really quickly, you had a baby, and your mom or a stepmom or somebody else says, hey, you know what you should do? You should do this. And they were trying to challenge your method. Here's what you heard. You're a terrible mom. Your child's going to die. You're an idiot. Like, that's what you heard, right? And you got really defensive. You get really defensive. You don't know me. You don't know my walk. You don't know what's going on. You have no clue what's going on in my world. You don't know my child. You've been here for 24 hours, fool. You don't understand me. Get behind me, Satan. I mean, that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, because we blend the two. Because when somebody challenges our methods, when somebody looks at you and says, hey, have you ever thought about doing this with your kids? Have you ever thought about, hey, listen, I just heard the way that you talk to your spouse, and listen, that's cool. I know you love him. I know you love her. I know that's great, but you know, there's a little bit of truth in all joking and whatever. That's a little sarcastic. Like, man, just, I don't know. Have you ever thought about like not saying that? Like not, you know, and again, we think he's challenging our motives. No, I love my wife. I love my husband. I would never do that. I would never go there. And we can't separate the two. It'd have been so easy for Moses to come back to Jethro and go, are you kidding me? No. It's my job to teach the people. I'm teaching the people. What do you think? I'm not doing a good job? You think I'm not a good leader? You think I don't care about the people? I care about the people. I care about all this kind of stuff like that. And we miss this one so much. There's some people in here right now, listen, you're doing the right thing the wrong way, and your heart is good. I don't know everybody in here right now, and that's okay, but I'm just going to assume that your heart's right. I'm going to assume that you really do love who you're with. I'm going to assume that you really do want the best in your relationships. I'm going to assume that you really do want the best for your kids. I'm assuming your motives are great. Here's the problem. For many people in here, let me just make a blanket statement. Your methods probably are not. That there's some stuff that you're doing. There's some stuff that I'm doing that's not good. And I've got to be willing to be open to it. I've got to be willing to sit back, and when somebody comes into my world and says, hey, Nick, listen, when you're preaching and you're speaking, you're okay, but you know, have you thought about this? Have you ever thought about doing this or not doing this? Or you say this word a lot or whatever. I've got to be open to that. And they're not challenging my motive. They're challenging my methods. For some of you today, listen, you've heard things like, you know, you really should be on a budget. And again, you think it's about your motive. Well, listen, I'm fine, and I'll be okay, and I'm good, and I would never spend too much, and the whole deal. Listen, your motive is very different than your method. Facebook's a big one, right? You go on Facebook right now, man, it's the craziest thing, because people have debates and arguments on Facebook. They put vague book posts out. They put things like, you know who you are, you know, or somebody will say something about a topic or a conservative or liberal issue or whatever that is, and they'll get in debates and go back and forth, and, oh, you don't understand this, and if you did this, and if you lived in my shoes, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, whole just arguments and memes and all these. Let me just tell you right now, in the history of mankind, I have yet to meet the person that said, listen, you know, Nick, I was a racist, but I saw a meme about that, and I changed all of my ways. I repented right then and there. The glory of God shone down upon my face, and I've changed, man. Why? That meme was incredible. No. Motive is right. Hey, I want to help them. They don't see this issue right. They don't see that problem right. They're not being sympathetic. They're not understanding what I'm walking through. They've never been through they don't, you know, they're responding. Their motive is right. Let me just tell you, some of you who post on Facebook, your motive's right. Your method is wrong. Because if you really want to help somebody, I'll tell you what happens. Because you challenge somebody on Facebook, and it's in front of everybody else, and everybody else that you're challenging gets defensive and goes up. If you really want to help somebody, you shut your laptop, you turn your phone off, or you turn your phone from internet to phone call, and you call them one-on-one. If you really want to help them. Now, if you want to look impressive, and you want to look smart, and you want to look like you're right, and you want to take a stand on something, cool, post all you want. That is exactly what happens. But Facebook is a great example of your motive and your method. Totally disconnected. And yet we challenge people. Let me ask it a different way for you. At what age did you stop growing? I mean, what? Because I've got kids, and I correct them all the time. Hey, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't go there. You shouldn't. None of them have ever looked at me and said, you know what, Nick? They wouldn't call me Nick, first of all. That would end poorly for them. They wouldn't even have to say anything else. The conversation would be over right then and there. But anyway, they would look at me. You know what, Dad? That's just not really my personality. I'm like, well, it's about to be, Because here's the deal. My job is to train them, to grow them, to push them. You need to eat that. It's not really my personality. I don't like that. I don't care. I said eat it. You need to not eat that. You need to go there. You need to stop doing that. You need to stop doing. We're going to put some boundaries around your schedule. We're going to put some boundaries around your stuff. I'm going to push you. Listen, as a pastor, I have the spiritual gift of pushing people to an annoyingly position. That's great. I love it. I haven't found that gift in the Bible. I believe I have that. You hang out with me, I will push you. But here's the deal. People look at me all the time. Nick, that's just not who I am. That's just not my personality. I've tried a budget. It's just not what I'm at. I mean, I know my finances are in a wreck, and literally, it's just like one bad move, and my whole thing crumbles. But, it's just not really who I am. Oh, I know I probably should talk to them face to face, but Facebook's so much easier. I'm not really a confrontational person. That's just who I am. And the issue is I'm not challenging your motives. I'm not challenging who you are. I'm challenging your method. And some of you are stuck. You're stuck in park. And you're not able to move forward in a relationship. You're not able to move forward in your finance. You're not able to move forward in your job. You're not able to move forward in some area of your life. Why? Because you refuse to separate motive and method. And there are some people around you saying, listen, you're bad at time management, or you're bad at, listen, I know you love your kids, but you're doing a bad job, or I know you love your spouse, but you're doing a bad job. I know you got some problems at work, but can I give you some feedback? Can I give you some coaching? Listen, you need to be a little bit nicer. I am nice. Okay, yeah, I heard it right there. That was great. Yeah, you're super nice. You just need to separate the two. And if you can do that, you'll make a shift. The last one is this. Revelation versus reason. This is huge. I'm so glad Moses got to this one, because this is the one we messed up more than anything. See, Revelation is God's word spoken to us, God's word communicated to us, God's word. That's what revelation is. It is revelation directly from God to us. Moses had that like no one else, I believe, in the history of mankind. Face to face with God, audible. It's like crazy, I don't have that, just to be really honest. I don't know if you do. If you do, ducky for you. Okay, cool. But I don't have that. And like literally, if there's something God wanted to tell him, he could literally tell him. Like, hey, Moses, don't do that. Hey, Moses, make sure, He had revelation. But Moses was able to separate revelation and reason. Because if you remember in the story, what I told you was this, that Jethro looked at him and said, I've got some advice. It's not revelation. God didn't speak to me. I mean, every now and then somebody walk up to me and be like, hey, Nick, God told me to tell you something. I'm like, wrong start, okay? God wants to tell me something, he'll tell me something, okay? A better approach is, hey, I just got some advice. Because we need both. If you go into my office, I have literally, this is not exaggerating, hundreds of self-help books. Leadership, marriage, parenting, just hundreds. And I got commentaries and Bibles and stuff like that too, but I have hundreds of self-help books. You know why I read so many self-help books? Because they're helpful, okay? It's not deep, because they're helpful. And yet we live in a world, there's some people that walk around and they sit back and they go, Nick, I just need the Word of God. Cool. If that's you, throw out your math book, throw out your science book, throw out all your other stuff, because listen, that's not in the Bible. None of that's in there. I'll tell you, one of the things I love to study is science. I love it. Because I believe science brings us closer to God. And yet there's some people stuck in the world with the Bible because they just sit back and they reject all science. And they sit back and go, if it's not in the Bible, that's stupid to live your life like that. And I'm so glad that Moses was able to separate the two, because I'll just tell you what I would do if I was Moses. I read this story multiple times. And every time I preach something, I try to put myself in the passage. And I put myself in the situation of Moses. So put yourself in the situation of Moses real quickly. You're a leader. And you're not just any leader, you're the leader. You've led a nation out of bondage. You speak to God daily. You parted the Red Sea. You've whipped some people as far as a war goes. I mean, you're the leader, and your father-in-law shows up, and for 48 hours goes, hey, Moses, you're doing it wrong. How open to his suggestions are you? I would be like, heck no, okay? Listen, Jethro, all right? Go back to your podunk little Midian where you're a priest and you lead your 14 people and get out of my way. I'm just being very transparent. I don't think I would have received it well. I think that there would have been an ego part of me. There would have been a part of like, listen, I would say, listen, I just spoke to God this morning actually. If he wanted to tell me something, don't you think he would have said that to me? Moses has the ability to separate the two. And right now, some people are giving you some good advice. Right now, some people are speaking to you. And they're saying things to you, and you're pushing back, and you're sitting back going, I don't know, and you just, wouldn't God tell me, and the whole deal, and I don't think that's in the Bible. It's just good advice, though. And if you can't take it, if you can't receive it, you're going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck in your journey. You're going to be pulled over on the side of the road, unable to get out of gear. Because you're going to be waiting for God to speak to you. And maybe God's speaking to you right now. Maybe there's some people in here right now where God's speaking to you. And you're waiting for him to audibly speak to you. You're waiting for him to read a verse. And yet you've got some friends of yours. You've got some family members. You've got people that care about you and love you that are going, hey, listen, you should probably stop doing that. Hey, you probably should start doing that. Have you ever thought about doing it differently? Have you ever thought about this? There's some reason. And your temptation is like my temptation to ignore it and to reject it. I'm just telling you. If you can make this shift, you can do that. It will change your world. And at River Lake, there's some ways that you can do that. Here's what I want to encourage you to do. You can join a small group. We're starting our small groups up here in a few weeks. If you've never been in a small group, I'll tell you, they'll change you in the best possible way. They're incredible. You find the right small group. I'll tell you, there's something powerful about a group of people sitting around you that go, hey, this is what I see in your world. And if you can have the ability to go, you don't know me, and you've never walked in my shoes, and you don't understand what's going on, and you don't understand what's happening, if you can have the ability to kind of ignore that, because that's your temptation, right? That's what we do on Facebook. They don't know me. They've never walked through my shoes. They don't understand what I'm walking through. Who cares? Jethro didn't know Moses' journey. Jethro never walked in his shoes. Jethro's the leader of a few hundred people maybe. Moses got millions. His ego wasn't at stake, though. He was able to receive that. See, we push back so much, and we reject, and we respond. See, here's the kicker. They've never walked in your shoes. True. They can't speak into my situation. False. And the problem is because we think the first statement is true, we think the second conclusion is accurate. And it's not. That you have people in your world that can speak into you, that can help you. I would encourage you to find a mentor, find somebody who's further and faster, and you can just push you. Just push you. Until you're uncomfortable. I got a guy 8:30 every single week. I call him every single week. 45 minutes we talk. He just pushes me. It's uncomfortable sometimes. It's hard sometimes. I get mad at him sometimes. I yell sometimes. I'm a better person for it. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. God's got some amazing things for you to do. If you can make some shifts. If you can kind of shift your perspective on some stuff. You can kind of pull some stuff together. So this week, what I want to encourage you to do is separate some stuff. Make sure that your calling is clear. Maybe you've never thought that through. So maybe sit down with your spouse or significant other or whatever that is and talk through, hey, what's our callings? What are we called to do in our lives, in our marriages, in our jobs, in our parenting? What are we called to do? And separate the callers. And figure out what you need to say no to, what you need to stop doing so that you're not so busy. Maybe it's saying no to your kids with a sporting event. It's harsh. But your calling is to raise a well-adjusted child who can be in the world. The call is I want to do that sport. And it can seem like the same thing sometimes, but sometimes you need to separate them. For some of you, you need to challenge your motives versus your method. And there's somebody that's been saying some stuff to you. They've been speaking into you. They've been pushing you. And you've been taking it personally. And you're missing the fact that they care about you enough to tell you. I'll tell you, those people are gold. The people that love you and yet still push you, still kind of prod you, still kind of go, oh, you're better than that, you can do that. And kind of, listen, I get it. We all want to be around people that just like us and love us. No, you're amazing. I'll tell you, the best friends you can have are the people that will push you. They care enough about you to care more about your future than your feelings. Those people are money. Or the last one. Some of you, listen, you've got a revelation from God. You're cool. That's great. But you need to pick up a book. You need to pick up a book some other way. You need to pick up a book and just kind of educate yourself and figure out an area in your job, maybe in your parenting, or just some self-help book. I don't know what it is. Pick up the right ones. Ask some people about the right ones, but you need to make that shift in your world. Because it's what's holding you back. It's what's preventing you from moving forward. Studying for this series, I was looking at gauges, and there was two that really jumped out to me quite a bit. There was the tachometer. And again, I don't know much about cars. I talked to my wife about cars, okay? But the tachometer registers and tells you the RPMs. That is fancy word for revolutions per minute. What the tach really does is it just tells you how hard the car is working. It doesn't tell you how fast it's going. It just tells you how hard it's working. In fact, you can be in park and put the pedal to the metal and be just flipping that thing, just that needle bobbing, okay? It's there. It's at 6, 7, 8,000 RPM. It's just hovering over there. It's burning up, and you're going nowhere. The shift that I'm asking you to make, the shift that I think all of us need to make, is not just in perspective, but the beautiful thing about a car is this. You can shift gears. And what hit me as I was walking through this is the craziest thing is you can shift gears. And if you're in first and you're at 7,000 RPMs and you're doing 15 miles an hour, you can shift it all the way up to fifth or sixth. And you can be clocking at 100 at 4,000. You can actually accomplish and be more productive and have less wear and tear on your body. You can move forward faster and do less. This series is not about doing more. It's not about making you more busy. It's not about adding more things to your world. It's really about freeing you from the stuff, from the garbage, from the callers, from the text messages, from the things that get in the way of your productivity, because you are God's chosen child. You are full of grace and mercy, and He loves you. If you're here today and it says you have God's Spirit, and it says He came to give you life, and life to the full. So my question is, does your life feel full? I know it feels busy, but that's the wrong gauge. That's the gauge of RPMs. That's the gauge of how hard you're working. What I'm talking about is the gauge of productivity, the speedometer. Does it feel full? Because Jesus says later on, my yoke, my teachings, my ways, my gauges are light. You can be more. You can do more. You can accomplish more. The moment that you shift gears and you settle down and you go, listen, I'm going to get rid of the stuff. I'm going to get rid of the cause. I'm going to get rid of the defensiveness. I'm going to get rid of the arguments. I'm going to get rid of some other stuff that's standing in the way. I'm going to read some more books. I'm going to invite some people in my world. I'm going to find a mentor. I'm going to jump in a small group. I'm going to jump into God's will and start to see what God has for me. You can do it. My hope, my prayer is that you would make the shift today, that you would put the pedal to the metal and you would start to see what God would have for you. That the end of 2017, when we're done and we're celebrating what God's done, you can look back and go, you know what, this was the day. This was the day I made this shift. This was the day that I started to take seriously my calling. This was the day that I put some stuff away, that I put some people away, that I put some addictions away, that I put some obstacles away. This was my day. This was the day I dropped the hammer. I put it in fifth gear, and my life changed forever. Would you all stand with me? I want to pray for you. Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you that you have put in us the power to accomplish, to be more. Help us make the shift. Help us divide our calling versus our callers. Help us not be defensive, but to really separate our methods and our motives. Help us receive revelation from you. Speak to us in a new way. Speak to us today about our calling. Speak to us today about our future and our destiny. But Lord, let us listen to reason. Let us listen to others. Let us receive what you would say and do through other people. Help us make the shift. We love you. We thank you. Amen. God bless. Have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.